I'm a journalist. I write for the Final Call newspaper. I write for the Washington Informer newspaper, and I'm news director at WPFW radio here in Washington, D.C. I guess I've always been a journalist, and so that um, the object is to tell the stories and to uh, report on things that are going on that we see in the society. And so I started in junior high school, which is so long ago, but high school I was in journalism. I studied in college, and then I started just about the same time I got involved with throughout school, really. I had a great opportunity, a great occasion. It was a sad event, but when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, of course, the country kind of convulsed and wrenched. But a good thing happened for me, that is, Newsweek magazine hired its summer interns, all of whom were black that year. And I was fortunate to be one of those summer interns, which gave me sort of a boost in the it was such a boost. It stayed on my resume for like 20 years. I mean, it was like a big deal. But Newsweek, I was an intern at Newsweek for the summer of 1968. And I learned some things. I mean, Newsweek at that time, they were what you called, in the news media at that time, this was way before you had CNN and any of the other networks like that, but they had the Seven Sisters, as they were called, which were the major media institutions in this country at that time. ABC, CBS, NBC, the three television networks, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Time Magazine, and Newsweek. And so working in one of those places, it was like really being in the big league, so to speak. And so that kind of put me in a sense ahead of some of what my peers would have been had I not been at Newsweek. And so and it also, what those kind of things do, it makes you feel like, yeah, I'm capable. I'm equal to everybody else. I can do what everybody else can do. I mean, these other people aren't smarter than me. The white students my age, they're not smarter than me. They're not better than me. I've proven that. And so that's what these sort of things do, and that's what it did for me. And so about that same time, I was involved in the U.S. Navy Reserve and got into the Vietnam War was going crazy, and the opposition was increasing and increasing, and I was finding myself in a position where I did not feel I could continue in the Navy Reserve, and became a conscientious objector. As it was, I said I was a Muslim. Muhammad Ali was a conscientious objector at the time, and I felt that what his model and his example I could follow and would do that. And so I got involved with the Nation of Islam, and also got involved writing for the newspaper, Muhammad Speaks newspaper, which was published by the Nation of Islam. And then I was a freelancer, and I was working, and I sort of in school, but I was working and doing freelance writing for Muhammad Speaks newspaper. And so it in a sense, being outside of the mainstream, after Newsweek, someone told me that I had done a job interview, and the people called and asked for a reference, and they said, well, was I going to burn down the newspaper that I was applying to work for? Of course not. But I mean, somehow or another, being involved in alternative news media kind of gives you that reputation. I was also fortunate at that time, to have worked in San Jose, California. I was at San Jose State. There were the great San Jose Mercury News was the big newspaper, still one of the largest newspapers in the country, and one of the biggest in California, and they were a conservative paper. And in town there was also a newspaper not unlike the Washington Informer here in D.C. It was called the East San Jose Sun, and it was published by Mort Levine. And he had a practice of hiring especially black students, to do not reporting jobs, but other jobs in his company. And I did lithography. I worked on back in the days of the offset printing, I did photographing, stripping plates, and things like that for the press. He had a black guy who was a dental student who was the press operator. Not just because he wanted to not pay the union guys, but because he really wanted to make opportunities for black students. And so, again, it's just I was able to find a course along that line, which was good, rather than in the corporate media realm, where somehow or another, after a while, you may start off thinking, yeah, well, I don't agree with all the stuff that they're telling me over here at Fox. But at some point, sooner or later, it's like being you internalize it, and you don't want to stand out so much, and you kind of go along, and you just, okay, well, I'll accept this. I mean, I know that's not right, but and so being in the alternative media, I was able to always have not be coerced into thinking things that I really wouldn't want to think. And so that's and then when I came to Washington in 1977, I was working for the Chicago Daily Defender. It was a black newspaper. And I mean, to show you, in a sense, the progress that was made in 1977, after Jimmy Carter was elected, my editor thought, this is a great opportunity for black people. Jimmy Carter was elected really thanks to black people. We should cover this. And it was probably true. But then, so that was a milestone that was achieved. Come along 16 years later, or 12 years later, here comes Bill Clinton. And he's really, as Toni Morrison, the author, said, the first black president. I mean, he really was he really related in special ways to the black community. And so there was another milestone. Bill Clinton appointed more black people. He really raised the standard. And who would have thought that 10 years or 12 years after Bill Clinton left, we would have an African-American person as president? So the progress doesn't stop. I'm just comparing. When I came here, this was thought to be a big deal. Jimmy Carter's president. It's going to be a good day for us. And so it really wasn't. It was good in many ways, but it didn't change the overall condition of our people. But it did move the standard, move the bar a little bit. And so when I came here, I also got involved with Pacifica Radio, with WPFW. Simeon Booker, who was the bureau chief of Johnson Publishing, Jet Magazine, told me at that time, he said, get into radio, young man. Radio is the medium of the future. It's the medium of Africa. And to a certain extent, he was absolutely right, except, the technology has advanced so far that it's not radio per se, it's really audio. Podcasting and iTunes and YouTube and things like that are, have made radio not quite obsolete, but have changed that picture. But still being able to do audio, being able to do video, understanding the importance of these kinds of processes and being able to master them is still important and is a good thing. So I got involved in Pacifica Radio at WPFW, and again, it was a place where radical views that I had from being in the Nation of Islam, from being an anti-war person, for being a conscientious objector, I was able to be comfortable and not required to apologize or apologize for or recant any of the ideas that I had. So that's sort of how I got there. And the Pacifica Radio is a special place because it's non-commercial, and it depends on listeners for support. And it means that it doesn't have as much, the commercial influence. I mean, if you imagine, if you look at the Sunday television talk shows, they're sponsored by, the military-industrial complex. I mean, people who make planes and defense equipment and military equipment and all this stuff. And so if they're your advertisers, they're going to influence what you think and what you say. I mean, you might think something, but then if you don't have it nailed down, you may not say it because, well, look at Oprah. Oprah went on and said something about meat and not eating McDonald's or something, and they beat her to death, made her back off her statement. I mean, this is Oprah. Back off, apologize. She was finally proven correct in what she said about meat, but that's the kind of influence that they have. And even if they don't make you back off what you say, they can waste your time with so much going to court, and they just wear you out and worry you to death because they have the resources and you have to defend yourself against them. So those are the good things about those institutions. WPFW, the Nation of Islam, of course, is a group that was founded by essentially the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to bring about, to lead black people to a separate country inside the United States, separate from white authority. And I buy into that. I mean, he opposed the war, and it was because of his tradition that I was successful as a conscientious objector. And many of the things that I think are detrimental to our society, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught against and made us successful in withstanding. So, and finally, the Washington Informer, which is a newspaper here, I'm very proud of. Calvin W. Rolark founded the paper, and his daughter Denise Rolark Barnes is now the editor. And it was an alternative newspaper. It was a weekly community newspaper. It's a great newspaper. You should read it. And they have, it's a grassroots community newspaper. One of the things I'm proudest of, which is about to happen in the very near future, and I saw in the paper this week, the spelling bee is going to take place. And so we had the films that promoted the spelling bee, but before that time, back in the 80s, 70s or 80s, the spelling bee is sponsored nationally by a newspaper in every city that it takes place. The Washington Post wasn't interested. They didn't care about no spelling bee. So Calvin Rolark, to his credit, brilliantly stepped in and became the sponsor of the Washington, D.C. spelling bee. And so for that reason, it's going to always be a homegrown event. It's not going to ever be co-opted by Holton Arms or any of the, as great as schools as they may be, it's not going to be co-opted by those kind of schools. It's going to be accessible to the public schools, accessible to the charters. It's going to be accessible to young people in the District of Columbia who are, not fortunate enough to go to Gonzaga or some of those places. So this is the sort of the mission of the Washington Informer, and those are the institutions. Everybody isn't fortunate enough to be able to work and find a career in a place where you feel that you are at home. That work is almost like it's almost not like work. It's like a vacation going to work, although it's work. Everybody doesn't find that, but then I've been fortunate, and so I've been blessed to have found that track in my career, and so I'm very thankful. You know, I've really had sort of like three careers. In California, I was when I first got involved with the Nation of Islam, I was involved in community college programs for young people, and then um, I was able to I was I was able to go to Chicago to work for the Nation of Islam and for Muhammad Speaks under the direct supervision of Mr. Muhammad. And so eventually, after about a year, I became editor-in-chief of the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, and I was the first Muslim who became the editor of the newspaper. And so, in addition to when you're, as you, if you know or have seen Denise Rolock Barnes, you have as much to do in terms of the details of editing and work. That is part of your responsibility. You also have a responsibility to the community, to be outreach, to be the representative of. And so that I was I guess an ambassador, you might say, not like other people, not unlike other people who were in journalism in Chicago at the time, but I was able to meet a lot of people. I met journalists and across the board, and you know, they were happy to meet someone from the Nation of Islam who wasn't just you know, trying to sell them a bean pie and take them to the mosque every week. And so it was that was a good thing, and that's how I ended up coming here from the Chicago Defender to work I was White House correspondent for a while, but so it opened the door, and so that so I was able to meet people like that, and I was in a sense required. I mean, that was just sort of my job. And then when I came to Washington, I had again some very good mentors, and I would say to everyone, get it. You know, one of the things that helps you succeed is to find a mentor, someone who likes you, who wants to see you succeed, and let them help you. Let them give you advice. I mentioned Simeon Booker from Jet Magazine. Another person was Ofield Dukes. My editor was Lewis Martin. And Ofield Dukes told me something, and I guess it always applies. We all have challenges, and I guess the thing, some of them, you know, make you think, what am I going to do? Is this the end? And I can say for myself, in those instances, it's been like some of those challenges have just been like it's almost like a test. I had when I was in California in that first career, you know, I was gung ho in the Nation of Islam and had ambitions and wanted to be a minister. And the opportunity to become a minister kind of got sidetracked by the person who was in charge, and I felt, you know, oh, woe is me, what am I going to do? And it wasn't a month before I learned that there was an opening at the Muhammad Speaks newspaper in Chicago, and I wrote Mr. Muhammad, and I had written maybe a dozen times before, but this time he sent for me. So, and everything changed. Um, if I had gotten this other appointment or opportunity that I thought I wanted, I never would have followed up and become editor of Muhammad Speaks newspaper. Um, I say that because these things happen from time to time. Here in Washington, I've had periods of, we call it freelancing, but it's really unemployment, where you don't, this is the other side of having positions where everything is reinforced. Well, the downside of that is you're not getting a paycheck like you would if you were somewhere else. So, and this was just a reminder of how Imogene Stewart, she used to run when she was alive, the House of Imogene. She said a couple of profound things. One, especially in a library like this, and if you should make the habit of reading, she said in her shelter, she ran a shelter for abused women. She said, if I ever wanted to hide any money, I would put it in a book. And so, meaning because the victims in the shelter would never have any reason, would never open a book. And so, that's a sad commentary, and don't let anybody be able to get away with hiding a fortune from you inside a book. The fortune is, the book is the fortune. Make yourself a reader and be a reader. The other thing she said was, I never give up, especially in the last 5 minutes before I get what I want. Right? The point is just don't give up. Sooner or later, you're going to, things, I believe, work out for the best. I was freelancing, not making any money, working for the Washington Informer. There was a television show at Howard University, Evening Exchange, used to come on Friday evenings. Basically, these were my essential sources of income. I did a little work for National Public Radio, but it was hardly enough to pay the rent. I barely, from month to month, paid the rent. I got very well acquainted with the landlord-tenant courts in D.C., and on many occasions would go to court. I would go to court so often the lawyer for my landlord would say, you'd see me on TV. What are you guys talking about on TV this week? Kind of ha ha ha. But in any event, it was, that was just the drill. I always managed. I'm still living in the same place, 20-something years. But I always managed to hang in. So around 1995, the Million Man March came, and probably around the time just before some of you all were born. Any of you all born before 1995? Okay, barely. You very young at that time, and would not have had any idea of what the Million Man March was. A incredible event. 2 million black men came to Washington, D.C. that day on the Mall. It was a weekday, a Monday. There was not one single crime in the District of Columbia that day. The idea that men would take responsibility for their lives and for their future and do things for themselves, it just caught on, and that was a great thing. I wrote several articles that, I felt kind of good. I had an article in the Washington Post and the Baltimore Sun and the USA Today, and TV appearances, and it was like the Baltimore, the Million Man March. I had kind of gotten some bounce career-wise, but not enough to really get me out of the ditch I faced with my employer. One day, this is a week or two after the Million Man March, I rode my bicycle here today just because I wanted to I didn't know how many people you all would see that you might encounter who would be on this side of the chair would be riding a bike. I mean, people ride the bus and drive cars, but I rode a bike, and I have been for about 15, 16, 17, 18 years now. So I'm riding my bike. I got to go to the Washington Informer. The Washington Informer, you talk about having challenges, was having bad times then. At that time, I learned sadly that you can't deposit the checks from the Washington Informer because they sometimes wrote the checks, and you know the big people that they wrote checks to would cash their checks first, and by the time your check got in, all their deposits may not have cleared, and they would bounce. So the practice was I would take it to the bank to cash the checks rather than deposit them. It got so bad for the Washington Informer that there was only one branch of the bank. I think it was a Riggs Bank at that time, and now PNC or something. Only one branch in town that would cash their checks, and that was a branch on South Capitol Street, way down, almost on the border to the Maryland border. So I'm riding my bike. It's a Friday. I got to get a check from the Informer. I got to go home. I got to cash the check. So now I live at 3600 Northwest. The Informer is 3100 Southeast. The bank is 40-something hundred Southeast. So I got to ride all this way, get this check, cash the check, in order to avoid a disaster with my landlord. I'm riding my bicycle over the 11th Street Bridge. It's pouring down rain. And I thought of something that Martin Luther King Jr. said. He said, undeserved suffering is redemptive. And I thought, I don't deserve to be suffering like this. And I started crying. But it's like, I couldn't stop, feel sorry for myself. I had to get to the Informer, get to the bank before 3 o'clock. Otherwise, my goose would be cooked, so to speak. So I'm just thinking how terrible, oh, woe is me. I made it to the bank. Went on. About 2 or 3 weeks later, Minister Farrakhan, who organized the Million Man March, came back to Washington and spoke at Union Temple Baptist Church. And it was sort of like just taking, just thanking Reverend Willie Wilson and all those in Washington who had helped with the Million Man March. And I attended, and he asked to speak to me. Okay, sure. And what he asked me was, I'm getting ready to go on a world tour. I'm going around the world, and would you be the journalist? Would you join my group and be a journalist and write and report on this trip? But of course. But I'm just saying, yes. So these challenges, you never know. You just can't give up because things look miserable. You have to hold on because, as Reverend Imogene said, soon you're going to have things are going to change. And so if you give up and just throw in the towel, then you don't get the you don't receive the reward for your having done the right thing and tried to do the right thing. So yeah, I've had challenges like that really throughout my life, but I've been fortunate, and I'm grateful that I've been able to come out on the other side and be able to smile. Resources, the resources are all around us, and it's important to recognize what they are and to and to go after them. Um, some of them are people. Like I said, a mentor is very important, and people, somebody who says, I mean, as a matter of fact, a friend of mine who's a professor at Morgan State College, he said that he learned, if you want to get a PhD, the most important thing to have is an advisor who wants you to get a PhD. So having a mentor is important and useful, and they can advise you as to, can point resources out to you, libraries. Today, books, of course. The online, online is really incredible, the things that are available online. But then on another level, you have to know some things to look for. I mean, so again, it's books, and I mean, you start with your studies, and then you can use some of the online resources to find things that carry you in a direction that deeper in a direction faster than if you had to go strictly to the library and find everything that it is that you're trying to find. On this level, on another level, at say the master's degree level, certainly at the PhD level, you are not, what you find online is may be a signal, but then you really have to study the original source material. I mean, I'm just thinking, for no reason, it might be birth certificate records or census records, as to who this person was, who this person's brothers and sisters were, whatever, because these are the things that you need to authenticate that it's not satisfactory in the academic community to say you found something online. It's true because I saw it on the internet. That's not necessarily so. So, but I mean, just the resources that are some resources are material, and those are I mean, those are, you can always have those. You may not have them in the abundance that you want, money, car, whatever. You may not have all of those things to the extent that you want to have them, but you're going to get more money. I mean, you live in the United States, and it's not easy to starve to death in this country. I mean, there's some problems. It's not an easy life always for everybody in this society, but we have a lot of opportunity, and I mean, everybody's got a smartphone today. I mean, people have expensive clothes and things like that. I mean, and I say especially to young women that, and I hope that the resources that you have, the material resources, the family support, is such that you get accustomed to thinking that someone is going to look out for me, someone is going to provide for me, and I don't have to sell my soul to somebody who flashes some money in front of my face. Yeah, girl, I'll take you to Red Lobster, whatever. It's like, I can go to Red Lobster, Ruby Tuesday. I mean, I don't need to be abused or to be taken advantage of or to be exploited in order to go to Ruby Tuesday. So I hope that, especially in the case of young women, that you have those kind of resources. So those are the easiest things. But then the immaterial resources, the advice, the direction, I mean, those things you have to look out for and pay attention to them, and then examine them and check them. And if things appear to, if someone gives you some advice about something, pay attention to it. Look into it. If it seems worthwhile, then take advantage of it. But use those resources. What is it? James Brown. What's the line? I mean, he coined it, but a lot of people said it. Use what you got to get what you want. Huh? So, each step is taking you to the next level, or taking you somewhere further along the line. And so the goal is to live a fulfilled life and to be. I mean, it's not McMansion in Fort Washington. I mean, it really is having a fulfilled life. Bringing your children to have a better life, and to have a community and society that really is a fulfilled society. So, I mean, those are the values. I mean, the resources should be used for the collective good, rather than just so I can have a Maybach or whatever. I mean, it's like a Mercedes is now too cheap. You can't have a BMW. You got to have a Maybach. Well, I mean, that's not the objective. The objective is to have a community that is fulfilled and succeeds, and that people, we're it's like the old South, minus the racism and the Ku Klux Klan, where people really were a family and were together. And so that's the point I would say of having the resources to be able to, and again, one thing I would say, look to. I think it's the future, gardening, farming, but gardening at home and things like that. I mean, it's like, things that we wanted to get away from 75 years ago are becoming important now. And it's like, yeah, what's wrong with having a garden? What's wrong with raising your own food? What's wrong with some of those things? So, those are some of the resources. Understanding the value of training and family and values that you receive at home and things like that. And so those are the things that'll get you to having a fulfilled life and being a contributing part of a community that is beneficial to all the members of the community. Well, I think President Obama, as a model, should do just the opposite. Instead of causing complacency, he ought to really inspire us as a role model. The original Obama is a man from Washington, D.C. His name is Charles Hamilton Houston. He attended Harvard University in the 1920s. He was on the law review. But I mean, he was a Negro coming out of, it didn't matter if he'd gone to Harvard Law School, it didn't matter. He's black. What's he going to do? Nothing. There was no place for him. There was no career for him, no future for him on the level that he deserved at the time. So he came back to Washington, and they made him dean of the Howard University Law School, which at the time was sort of like a community college. It wasn't really a first-class law school. But then he had all these principles that he'd learned at Harvard and all of his high standards that he had achieved at Harvard, and so he put them into place at Howard University Law School. Well, as fortune would have it, because of segregation in the 1930s, 40s, The state of Maryland refused to let black students attend the University of Maryland Law School. We'll send you anywhere in the world to go to college, but you can't go to the University of Maryland School. So there was this kid out of Baltimore named Thurgood Marshall. They sent him to Howard University. Well, what did they do that for? They get this really, this empty vessel, potential genius, Thurgood Marshall, and they put him in the hands of this Harvard Law School law review genius law instructor. And so he poured himself into Thurgood Marshall, did Charles Hamilton Houston. And he, and in addition to building the law school, but he poured himself into Thurgood Marshall. And so Thurgood Marshall then became the Charles Houston that Charles Houston couldn't be. And went on to practice law. I mean, he argued 32 cases in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. He won 29 of them. What a record. This is the result of him being mentored and taught by this Charles Hamilton Houston. Now, we fast forward, and here's Barack Obama, who is a Harvard Law Review, president of the Harvard Law Review, Harvard Law student. Actually, Charles Ogletree, the professor who taught both Barack Obama and Michelle Robinson Obama, said that he thought Michelle would become something before he thought Barack would become something. Well, we have yet to hear from the fullness of Michelle Obama, but what I'm saying is what he became, he came and what he is now and what he represents. He is a role model for what an aspiring person should be, should look like, should aspire to. Work hard, study, perfect your craft. And now here he is. He's Harvard Law Review, Columbia University, and people still call him dumb. Still say he's like a monkey. I mean, people still. I mean, it's just. I mean, that's just the way people behave. That's the way people want to see black people. I mean, as sharp as he is, and he's a pretty sharp guy. As sharp as he is, people want to make him portray him as being a dumb guy because that fits their view of what black people are. So, what I'm saying is, the idea is to be like that, to be so, to be smart, to you don't have to be square, you don't have to be a mark, you don't have to be a buster, but to be sharp and intelligent, so that you don't go someplace and you're working on some job and some little white kid out of Bethesda says, "Oh, they so dumb. They don't. She's dumb. He's dumb. He don't know nothing. He can't spell." Don't be like that. Be like Barack. Be like Michelle. Perfect your craft. Study and learn. I mean, you don't have to act like Urkel, but be. Don't be ashamed of being brilliant. I mean, Paul Robeson is a classic example of a brilliant. I mean, he was a law school graduate. He was an athlete. He was an All-American football player. He was an actor. He was a singer. I mean, he was no mark. He was a champion, and never. Harry Belafonte. I mean, people like you don't have to be. You don't have to be lame in order to be brilliant, and so I think Barack Obama does that. And, he has a little swerve about himself. I mean, he's, but in terms of if you look at, how a black person should comport himself, should carry himself, a black man. Not in every situation, wear a suit and a tie, but if you want to, he has the look of success, and so that just having the look doesn't guarantee you success. But then, so we shouldn't be complacent. Uh, and I hope, because there has to be another achievement beyond him, the next level. I mean, W.E.B. Du Bois was the first black to get a PhD from Harvard University, and if you look at him, and I mean, so we keep advancing. The Look at Curtis Jackson. I mean, he started his career as Thugnificent when he was 50 Cent, and then now he's Curtis Jackson. I mean, he's the Vita Water. He owns the water company, and he's a smart businessman. He wears suits. He's I mean, if you were to see him walking down the street, most of the time you wouldn't recognize him. I hate to say it, I mean, because I think she's reverted back to her old ways, but Beyonce, around the time, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when she first got the L'Oreal contract, and she's like L'Oreal Paris and limos, and people just, you really are a special lady. She said she was ashamed that she had ever recorded the song Bootylicious. Now she's back to performing it again, and at the Super Bowl that was like a throwback. I mean, you don't need that. I mean, Alicia Keys performed the national anthem and she was dressed respectably. I mean, you could still tell that she was a fine woman, but you don't need to have that. I mean, Bootylicious is like, that's beneath you. That's beneath someone who is, I mean, they have so much money and they think they can do anything now, but it's not like that. And they shouldn't. She and Jay-Z ought to be more careful, because it's like, so what's your child going to aspire to? Are you gonna keep your child? You got a little girl, so is she gonna, when she's 15, what are you gonna be thinking about her? 16, 17, what are you gonna be thinking about her? Is she gonna be Bootylicious, or is she gonna be Michelle Obama? And so Michelle Obama, in that sense, I excuse me for using the expression, is a babe. She is drop dead gorgeous. She is fine. So you don't have to, So yeah, okay. And just think about that, and so no complacency. No, try to continue and move on, and continue to raise the standards. While you're in school, take the time. I mean, it's the time when you can make mistakes and they don't cost you anything. You get a bad grade, well, you can make it up. School is the time to really learn and experiment, and like I said, learn to spell, learn your grammar, learn math. Just stay on it. Use the time wisely, and don't be drawn into by the peer pressure into the street thing. I mean, it's okay. You have some stuff that some things that you might enjoy doing, and it's okay, but if it's a choice between, you have responsibilities that are going to advance your career, as opposed to responsibilities that to just hang out with your crew. Most of the people who will invite you away from things that lead you to success, whether you go with them or don't go with them, in 20 years, they won't be a part of your life. I mean, what'll happen? I mean, some will get married, get jobs. They might get a scholarship to work at Safeway. Um, Whatever. I mean, they got children. They go to jail. They get killed, and so it's like, okay, as opposed to if you have a chance to have a higher path, then stay to that. I mean, you can have friends and all that, but don't be distracted into following some of the weaker temptations that people offer you. You can. It's better to hold on and be strong and succeed, and you'll be thankful. You'll be glad that when you look back to say, yeah, I'm glad I didn't hang out with that dude that day.